on for a minute. Right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this open forum on the refresh of the SEND strategy 2021 to 2023 for Suffolk. My name is Anne Humphreys. I am the co-chair of Suffolk Parent Carer Network. Tony?
Hi, my name's Tony Vassong. I'm a trustee for PACT, which is Parents and Carers Together.
And Jamie?
Hi, I'm Jamie Hawkins and I'm a programme manager and I work for Children's Services for Suffolk County Council.
Thank you very much, both of you. So we're going to hand over to Jamie in a moment and I will share my screen so that she can talk through the proposal for the SEND strategy and the piece of work, and then we will open it up to questions. So Jamie.
Thank you, Anne. So I just really wanted to give you a little bit of background as to why we're doing this work now. So we actually started developing the new SEND strategy because our existing SEND strategy actually comes to an end this year. So in February, we launched Time to Listen About SEND campaign, which was a way that we hoped we could work across Suffolk with everyone who has an interest or is touched by SEND to develop a new SEND strategy, as Anne mentioned, for 21 to 23. We felt it would be really helpful, and Anne has shared the one-page infographic which we developed to really aid conversations and support parents and carers and practitioners across education, health, care, and also our children and young people to help them understand, what a strategy is and what we're trying to achieve by that strategy. Supporting everyone to have really good conversations and gather some valuable ideas and suggestions that can be then used to develop the strategy as we move forward. So in the early stages of the work, we had some amazing engagement from schools, and we had over 35 school heads who signed up to be SEND champions. And at that stage, we received about 60 responses to an online survey to get some initial feedback. We attended quite a few forums and events, and we gathered some ideas and ran some drop-in sessions as well. We also distributed flyers and posters across Suffolk at that stage, working closely with the Young Persons Network and SPCN. So unfortunately in March, the COVID pandemic meant we had to pause that work because we all had lots of other important things that we needed to be working on at that stage. And I think the fact that we're starting the work again now, some people feel that it's probably not the right time to be starting this work again. But we think that if we don't crack on with the strategy and have a shared strategy in place, then there's a lot of work that already we're starting to think about and develop that won't be informed by everyone's views. And that's really important to us moving forward, that it's not something that we develop as a local authority or as health, that it's actually a shared strategy. So I know it's busy and I know it's a really difficult time for everyone, but we really wanted to restart the engagement again so that we can get this strategy in place for early 21. And we're going to follow a very similar process to what we started in February, which is using the infographic to kind of really ignite those conversations. Bit more virtual this time, so I'm not running around going to lots of meetings, nor is Anne, nor are lots of our leads across the council. We're having to do lots of stuff via Teams, and although it feels a bit different doing it via Teams, I still think we can have some really valuable conversations, and other people can then use their own kind of route to talk to people, their existing meetings and Teams calls that they've got. So we really, really want you to contribute. You're very important to the strategy, and we feel that by joining up and starting this conversation and getting some really good quality feedback, we'll be able to make sure that we are developing programs of work that will meet the needs of all children and young people in Suffolk. So the infographic itself, I don't know if you wanted, Anne, for me to just run through kind of the timings and how we kind of gather the feedback. Would that be helpful? Yeah. Okay, so if you look at the infographic on the page, you'll see that we've tried to make it as simple as we possibly can because of the amount of people that we want to engage in this process. So we tend to normally put a strategy on a very boring page and ask people a number of questions about whether they like it or not. So we wanted to make it a bit more engaging and visual. So we've put a sort of map across this infographic, which talks about, to start with, number one, our send vision. Now, with any strategy, there is always a vision attached to it. So, you know, what is it we're trying to achieve as part of this work? And we don't think it needs to change drastically from what the existing send vision is, but obviously we really want to get your views on whether it needs to change. So at the moment, our SEND vision is working together. We will support children and young people with SEND to meet their potential and live healthy, fulfilling lives in their community. So it's quite a broad statement. Vision statements always are quite broad and all-encompassing. But we would really appreciate whether you have any views on whether or not you think that needs to change. So the next question we're asking is the aim for the strategy. So, you know, how, you know, what is our aim? What are we actually trying to achieve? So our aim in the existing strategy is children and young people with SEND and their families have access to the timely information, services and support they need to enable them to achieve their potential. So that's about us ensuring that we have everything in the right place in terms of access, that people can access at the right time across all our services and information as well, so we can make sure our children can and young people can achieve their potential. So again, do you agree or do you think that should change? The third area is measuring our progress. So currently, we obviously measure progress within the SEND transformation programme. It does tend to be based around more data in terms of numbers and timeliness and access to pathways, etc. We are working on more outcome-based measures so that we can actually try and understand the lived experience of children and young people and families in Suffolk, rather than just asking how quickly someone accesses a service or how many permanent exclusions there have been across Suffolk, and whether children are hitting their attainment targets. So they're very, very useful targets to have in place and measures to have in place, and they do inform a lot of our work. But the other side of that is that we need to understand the quality and the outcomes of everything that we do to make sure that we're doing the right things and that they're actually having an impact. So that's why it's really important that we measure our progress. And there are some broad statements listed there around how we can measure our progress. And again, it's really difficult to capture this in 4 statements because, you know, we look at hundreds and hundreds of measures across SEND, but we do believe that this kind of chunks them into areas that is understandable. But again, if you think that they are either not right or they need to be different or you want to add to that, then by all means, please put forward any suggestions. So the fourth area is what actions would make the biggest difference. And this is really around the doing of the work. So these are, you could call them kind of project or program areas within SEND, of where we actually get on and deliver the changes around transformation and, you know, day-to-day changes that we need to make across all of the work in SEND where things might not be working as well as they could be. And we have already chunked them up into 4 areas. So this again is something that's in the existing strategy, which we've kept in the 4 areas. But again, if you feel that they're not the right areas or they need to be called something different, then by all means tell us. So we have the SEND local offer, and you'll see under there's some examples of the sort of things that would be included under the local offer work. So that's not an agreed list, that's just some suggestions in there. And I think what we're asking is for you to think really broadly and as parents and carers about what is most important to you about the work over the next 3 years. So what do you think is either working well, which we need to build on, or something that is not there at all and we need to actually start working on? The second one is the SEND journey. And again, you will see in there that there's a kind of a range of things that sit under this project or program area. And that's really around how we can improve support for our children and young people in schools, from GPs and care services, how we can improve early intervention and outreach, what we can do to improve the support for our children and young people to achieve progress and outcomes in their plans. Quite a lot of the EHC work sits under this area, so any of our kind of statutory processes sit under the SEND journey, and how can we improve the support we give our children and young people who are excluded from school. So this is quite a chunky area of the programme, and this is led by Tracy Winwood, who leads our family services team. So again, it's a lot of work around the EHC process, quality, timeliness, and all of those sort of things. So again, any ideas around improvements that need to happen in those areas, or building on things that work well. The third area is developing inclusive education, health and social care provision. So again, this is how do we make those services more inclusive? And that's a big question. So, you know, some of our provision is already very inclusive, but we need a more consistent inclusivity across Suffolk. So that's something that we really need to focus on. And also, you know, our health services, we've got some big areas of work under this priority area, including mental health, transformation, speech, language and communication, which I know, you know, do receive quite a lot of press, and there's an awful lot of work going on in these areas. So again, there's any suggestions around improvements or things we can do differently in there would be greatly received, and how we can develop the right care offer for children and young people. So not forgetting the social care element in here as well, because that's something that we would really appreciate some feedback on, about how we can, you know, develop the social care element of SEND. And the last, but by no means least, is number 4, which is preparing for adulthood. So how can we improve our plans for transitions throughout a child's education journey? So there are many transition points for a child, and we want to make sure that we can support the system to get that right. How can we continue to develop good plans for adulthood? It's difficult right now because opportunities are have been limited for our young people. So we need to really motor on that and make sure that we can get some good provision in place for those people, and have good plans. And I suppose it's the post-16 courses and making sure that the progress and ambitions can be met for our young people. So how do we make sure that we can meet their ambitions, whatever they might be? So not just further education, but whatever they may be once they want to move forward in their lives. So that's a very quick overview of 4 very big areas of work. And what we would like to do is then get everyone's feedback on those 4 areas. And we've created a feedback link, which is just a mini survey where you can put free text information in against each of those areas. You don't have to do it for all. If you just want to focus on one area, then that's absolutely fine. But it just enables us to collate that feedback in one place and make sure that we can then theme that feedback to make sure that it's captured and can be included in how the objectives are developed and taken forward in the strategy for us to obviously put into a draft strategy. So in terms of the timings of that, so we are now obviously collating feedback from as many people as we possibly can. And we would like to have as many of those conversations before the middle of January, really, where we'll be starting to develop a draft strategy, which will be a page document, but we'll then have a further document that sits behind it just to explain in a little bit more depth what each of those areas of the strategy actually mean. So we like to keep it nice and simple and straightforward in terms of the strategy, but there is a huge amount of work that sits behind the strategy, which we can then explain to you in a bit more detail. That will then go to what we have it's called the SEND Programme Board, and that will go to them at the end of January for them to sign off a draft strategy that will then be put out for public consultation on the 1st of February. That public consultation will run for 4 weeks. And that will be an opportunity for either anyone who hasn't been able to contribute to this feedback process to do so, but also for you to see it on a page and to see it and think, I put forward some suggestions, I'm not sure they've been captured as I would have hoped, or I can't see them, or actually I'd just like to give a little bit more feedback. Yeah, I like that, I like the way that reads. You know, as much feedback as we can get as part of that public consultation would be fabulous. And then at the end of the public consultation, we will then take on board any of that feedback. That will then be fed into another board meeting with the SEND programme board, also the oversight board, which is our political board, who oversee all of the SEND activity across the system, to then agree whether that is the final strategy and whether that can then be published. So we're hoping we're giving you as much of an opportunity to contribute as you possibly can. And I think that's the most important thing for me, is to make sure that we can capture as many views as possible. And I'm really grateful that you've given up some time today so we can now have a chat through some of the strategy and see if you've got any questions, and also if you've got any feedback you want to give us now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamie. And hopefully the link to the feedback appeared towards the end there. I'll check that back on the video, but I looked it up and added it to the PowerPoint. So I'm going to stop recording now.